Selling a business is one of the biggest financial decisions an entrepreneur will ever make. Whether you're a small business owner looking to retire, a founder seeking a profitable exit, or a company navigating a merger, the process is complex, emotional, and full of potential pitfalls. That's where business brokers come in, specialists who help owners navigate the sale, connect with the right buyers, and maximize the value of their life's work. But what exactly does a business broker do? How do they determine the value of a company? And what should business owners know before they even think about selling? Today on Off Road with Frank Ferraro, we're diving deep. We're diving deep into the world of business sales with Harry Tight, an expert business broker who has helped countless entrepreneurs successfully exit their companies. We'll talk about why business owners turn to brokers, common mistakes sellers make, and how to get the best deals possible when it's time to move on. Whether you're thinking about selling your business now or just planning for the future, this episode is packed with insights you won't want to miss. I'm glad to introduce Harry Titan, business broker with Link Silicon Valley. Harry, welcome to Off Road.
Thank you, Frank. I love your show. This is really great that you're having me on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Harry, we were talking about different strategies, and on Off Road, we talk a lot about capital markets and mergers and acquisitions. And, that's good for some companies and not others. You seem to be a traditional business broker, and I just wanted to go over a few things with you today. I'm glad to have you on because I think that it's going to be able to give a really, really good insight to some of the people that listen to the show. What stage should a business owner start thinking about an exit strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, an owner operator knows when they're at that place. They might have already done what they can to grow their business, and possibly their revenue has plateaued, or at least the growth rate has slowed. They might be thinking about moving on to their next adventure, which could be another business if they're a serial entrepreneur. They might be thinking about a strategic exit where they want a bigger business in their space to buy them out and maybe take their product to the next level. Some business owners just want to retire from the day to day grind of running a business. So it's good to keep in mind that an exit will pay them off in multiples of their annual earnings, which could be EBITDA or seller's discretionary earnings. In other words, they'll get many years of earnings without having to work those years. And that's another incentive for owners to think about selling and start thinking about how they can position their business to get a lot of offers for it.
What are some of the most common reasons business owners decide to sell?
Part of what a business broker has to do is to estimate the value of their business, which is essentially trying to guess the offers that are likely to come in. And a lot of business owners, operators don't even know the value of their own business. This public service that business brokers provide helps them put a number in the back of their mind to get a valuation that they feel, wow, okay, this is really going to do it for me. And I can move on to the next phase, which, like I described before, could be another business or retirement. I think that valuation and how much money they can get right now is a really strong reason that a lot of owners decide that, okay, let's list the business for sale. So in addition to the previous reasons that they might be looking for a strategic exit, this business valuation is a strong incentive for a lot of the folks that I deal with.
How does working with a business broker differ from just selling a business independent?
It's important to put yourself in the shoes of a potential buyer. They will only make an offer if they feel very comfortable with the information they are receiving. If a seller tries to sell their business by themselves without a broker, it's going to take up a lot of time talking with potential buyers, vetting them, trying to convince them to make an offer. This would distract them from actually running their business. It's not very likely to be successful. Potential buyers prefer to speak to someone who is a neutral party to the transaction, and ideally someone who has a fiduciary responsibility to their interests. And that's where an interesting thing comes in with the state of California, where I'm based out of. The state has made a regulation that requires the listing agent for the business to have a dual fiduciary responsibility to both the buyer and the seller. And this solves this problem that I just described, where, now a buyer can feel more comfortable to make an offer because the information they're receiving they feel is a neutral party. And this also was instituted by the state of California because it was hard for a buyer to really get an independent buy side agent who would be willing to learn the ins and outs of a business to the same level as a listing agent already learned from the seller. Basically, the buy side was left in most cases without any fiduciary responsibility towards the buy side. And the state of California sort of stepped in and said, well, let's make that listing agent, let's give them a dual fiduciary responsibility. And I believe that's really smoothed the transactions.
Makes
Uh,
sense. They do that in real estate. They have seller brokers and seller agents, and they also have buy side agents. So now, are you regulated with the state? How does that work?
Yes, historically, businesses used to be brick and mortar, as we know. And that's really when the Department of Real Estate for each of the states got in and decided to become a regulator for sale of businesses. Now, the way we're dealing with most businesses, there typically isn't real estate involved, although sometimes there is, which allows us to basically list businesses nationwide or even out of country. But our regulator is basically the state of California Department of Real Estate. And every state is similarly regulated by their Department of Real Estate when it comes to sale of businesses.
Got it. What are some of the challenges that business owners face when trying to sell their business or seeking an M&A candidate, like when doing mergers and acquisitions?
Well, I think one of the challenges that a seller is going to be facing is trying to forecast revenue and earnings for the next few years. And because most potential buyers really want to see some stability in the financials for that company. And they want to see that this is not an end of life situation for that company. They want to see that even the owner operator feels that they have a pipeline of business or annual recurring revenue that they can put a number on. This is very comforting to potential buyers. So we typically ask for a forecast for 3 years if it's possible to provide. At this point, what would you earn by the end of 2025, 2026, and 2027 if you can predict that? This is really helpful for potential buyers. But at the same time, it puts the business owner in a situation where they have to do some forecasting where maybe they haven't done forecasting so far in their business because they trying to sell their business is something new.
Wow.
Uh,
A lot of agencies, I know, when we list companies on the capital markets, depending on their financials, a lot of companies have to have audited financials. So that's a big, I would think in your business, that's a big thing, right? Having audited financials.
and tax returns. A lot of potential buyers want to see the tax filings for the past 3 years, and they are actually entitled to that. The state of California requires that any potential buyer have access to those numbers. As a broker, I tried to pull together from their P&L statements and their tax returns and make sure everything is lined up because they have potential buyer has access to all of that information. And so I have to be prepared to explain any sort of discrepancies or filing requirements could be slightly different. So the numbers can be sometimes close, but not exactly the same. being able to explain that to a potential buyer is very important. The other challenge that business owners face sometimes is just to have a good picture of the competitors in their marketplace and describe a unique value proposition for their business. Buyers may be new to the space and they need to get that comfortable feeling that they know who's in the landscape and what is the unique offering from this business. So I think that's another thing that sellers typically are asked to kind of come up with and explain to a listing agent
Hmm.
what the
Well,
situation.
in my experience, CEOs usually valued their companies more than what they were worth.
Yeah, yeah.
So, well, that's the big question. How do you determine the valuation of a business, and what are some of the factors that impact the final sale price?
That's a very good question. When we are trying to determine the valuation,
Some people might have a lot of heart and emotions when it comes to sales and value. This is a question people would want to know. Who are these guys and how are they going to value me?
absolutely. Especially when the business is kind of like a baby that a seller has built from scratch. It's hard to bring in the market. What we do is we try to be as scientific as possible. So we subscribe to multiple data vendors who track sales of all types of businesses throughout the nation. And so we have accounts with these vendors. So we download this data and we get it prepared for a report for the seller. We combine that information with multiple valuation methods, some of them used by SBA lenders. We're looking at the sale from the point of view of the buyer. A lot of buyers, especially for more expensive businesses, are going to have to get a loan. And so then we have the general guidelines from the SBA lenders that they use. We apply those. Our report includes each of these different methodologies. We can produce multiple numbers. They're typically very close to each other. This gives a higher level of comfort with the seller that, okay, I can see the valuation done in a few different ways, and they're kind of coming up with a very similar number. So, I have more confidence that this is probably what the business is going to be worth if I put it on the market. We're trying to guess what the offers are going to look like coming in based on what the offers were for previous businesses.
What industries are hot right now? See out there.
Well, when it comes to M&A activity, I think we're seeing a lot of tech companies acquiring AI or cloud companies. We're seeing some big pharma or HMOs buying up biotech or telehealth companies. And we're also seeing some oil and gas companies diversifying into renewable energy. What we see is private equity sitting on trillions of dollars of cash, getting into the retail space and buying up fintech disruptor technology. We're also seeing military and defense companies getting bought out. And that's in part because of geopolitical tensions, as well as some new alliances with some big countries that the US has. I think there's a lot of interest in the defense space as well.
What advice would you give to a business owner who wants to maximize their sale price?
Well, I would say hire a business broker and let them negotiate the best price. Having a neutral party not just do the heavy lifting for you, but also gaining the confidence of a potential buyer. And I think that's really the smartest decision a business owner can make in this space. And also, as a bit of a warning, sometimes accepting the highest offer, which may be the basic reaction seller would have, and without vetting the buyer or without vetting how serious is that buyer, that can actually run into a lot of heartache during due diligence. They may not get funding from an SBA lender. So there are some potential buyers out there that they're just figuring out the lay of the land and may not be serious. So we do a lot of vetting on the buyers before we recommend that they accept an offer. because we've seen this story play out. So this is a little red flag that we run into often, where it's important to get a buyer who's serious about wanting to take over your business, wanting to continue the success of your business and keep that business afloat for years to come. I think a seller should be ready to sell at the market price. And I think that's the best mindset. Let the business broker try to negotiate the best price out of the market participants. I think that's the best mindset for a business owner.
What are some of the common deal structures that you guys do? Is it always going to be cash? Is it cash and securities? Is it maybe financed? What are some of the structures?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And especially in the context of a recent presidential election, what we were finding was that a lot of buyers were uncertain about the economy. Is the economy going to be the same after a change in power, or is it
All I know is eggs and chicken wings have come down.
That's right. So there's definitely good silver linings in the economy. However, buyers will look at that situation, the total valuation. They'll figure out, okay, cash at close, let's say we'll pay out 60 to 75% of the total valuation in cash at close, with the remainder paid out as earnouts. This is a very common strategy that buyers use, and sellers are often okay with getting up to three quarters of their business value at close, with some earnouts happening either monthly or annually for a couple of years. These earnouts can be structured as seller's notes at interest, or more simply just deferred payments. And in certain cases, some payments can also be contingent on meeting certain financial targets. When offers do come in, a seller should be prepared that, okay, maybe I won't be getting 100% cash at close. There might be a possibility where the buyer needs earnouts from the business to complete the sale.
Every deal is different.
Yeah. And the cash at close can obviously partly be financed, or cash actually from the buyer themselves. Financing typically adds more time to close because SBA lenders will take more time to evaluate the business. We find our businesses are very unique, so the banker needs more time. So typically, the close time for a deal that has financing involved is going to be closer to 60 days. Whereas if a buyer's coming in and they're going to pay a large percentage in cash from their own savings or their own lines of credit, then that close could be as fast as 30 days, but more typically 45 days. So that's something that a seller should be expecting, that you're going to get a longer close time for financed deals.
Well, Harry, I want to thank you for coming on today. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. If people wanted to get a hold of you, how can they reach you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. They can also reach me on our company website, link-siliconvalley.com. If you click on About Us, you'll find me listed there, and you can book time with me to chat, to talk to some of your listeners.
Yeah, I hope so too. That'd be great. Thank you for coming on. And everyone, until next time, I'm your host, Frank Ferraro.